So hi everyone, and welcome to Android254 and Kotlin Kenya April Meetup. So today we have a lot of stuff lined up. So I don't want us to maybe take much time for the speakers. So I just want us to start with the introduction bit as always. So yes, I always share this, maybe because if this is your first time you are attending our meetup, maybe for 2021, I always try and share our plans with all the attendees so that maybe in case you also have something in mind, you can also maybe tell us or maybe reach out to us. So number one, we resumed our monthly meetups on February. Yes, so we've been doing them every month, every third Saturday, but today is the fourth Saturday of the month because we had another meetup with Hways last Saturday. So that's why we had to push it forward. So these meetups are virtual and also recorded. So you'll have to bear with us. We have not yet uploaded the recordings for the past 3 meetups, but they are in line and we'll upload them as soon as we can. Yeah, so even this one, once we have the editing and everything finalized, we'll upload them. So another thing that we planned and also have in action, we have like the hackathons. We have the very first one planned, and once we have it ready, we'll just upload on the Meetup page, and then you guys can participate. So we are planning to make them every 2 months so that we can just try to, one, build skills, and two, have people showcase what they have built, and so on and so on. Yes, another thing we have is quarterly in-depth session, nicknamed as Squids. So these are just workshop and conferences, just to, let's say we want to deep dive in motion layout. We just set a session where you start maybe from maybe intermediate-ish, and then we deep dive into such topics. So we'll be having this, and it's also in the plans. We have one other thing, which is called as Showcase Nights. Also, the nickname is Show N. So building something awesome. If you are building something awesome, this is for you. And I think just later on the slide, I'll be sharing the link to the first showcase session. So in case you have not yet maybe RSVP'd, you can maybe get a chance to RSVP. Another plan was to get more speakers, maybe from Kenya and all over Africa, also Googlers, GDEs, and dev evangelists. So as you have seen, we've been having meetups with the Huawei team. So we'll be having like such meetups separate from the monthly ones, but just other sessions from maybe GDs, other Googlers, and other industry experts to maybe drive or maybe take you through certain topics and so on and so on. And of course, in case you are here and you feel like you wanna give a session like we usually have these monthly meetups and also the showcase and also the quarterly in-depth sessions, we have like so many things where you can just submit your session and also maybe get to speak and so on and so on. Yes, and mostly, above all, we are targeting on quality, just making sure we build quality apps, and also after we build quality apps, we get quality speakers, and then we also get to improve the quality of maybe what we are working on, be it libraries, apps, and so on and so on. Yes. So that is maybe our plans for this year. Some of them have already started, like the monthly meetups and the showcase, and also the speakers. At least we've got like numerous speaker application from you people, and I'll urge you to keep on submitting on the speakers. So speaking of speakers, we have our Meetup speaker application form. That is the link I will share on the chat shortly after I'm done with the presentation. But so far, so good. I want to thank everyone who have participated or submitted a session, because we have sessions up to maybe the whole of this year from you people, and we are still accepting more. So currently we have sessions for May and June, and July packed. So later on, if in case you have a session, you feel like you wanna maybe submit your session, you can plan for August and the rest of the year. Still, you can submit because, as I've mentioned, we have other sessions that we've planned. So we still have more slots for people to maybe speak and so on and so on. So don't feel shy of maybe submitting your session. And maybe the flow that we usually have, once you maybe submit your session, we usually, maybe you submitted, let's say for May. Once it's on May, we'll maybe get in touch with you and tell you maybe whether you're going to speak that month, or maybe you're going to speak the following month, or in case we need you to change something about your maybe presentation and so on and so on. So in case you have a session and you have not heard yet from us, so don't be worried. You'll hear from us when the month that you've applied for is maybe near. Yeah, because we try to speak to you maybe 3 weeks or 2 weeks before. And the person who usually speaks to you is Candy. Yeah, she's the one maybe responsible for all the speaker communication. So feel free to submit your session. We don't discriminate, or we don't usually, so far we have not rejected any session. So feel free to submit your session and we'll get in touch with you. So up next is, so for today, we have a topic on dynamic feature modules. It's a very interesting topic. And then I'll not maybe speak more not to preempt on what the speaker has. And yes, so the other session is a showcase session, as I mentioned. We try to, in case you have something you want to show to the maybe audience or attendees and you feel like you want to get feedback, we have such session. So we decided to try it out today. So we have a showcase session by Mugambi, who will be the first one to go. I'll let him introduce himself just after I'm done. So as I mentioned, we have maybe showcase sessions. So the first one is next Friday, that is 30th. So we have a theme apps that we can use in mass. So in case you have an idea, whatever idea that you have, please feel free to RSVP. That is the Meetup link. I'll also maybe share the same link on the chat after I'm done with the presentation. So what will you build? That is a question for you. And what will you showcase? That is a question for you. So please, for this showcase session, we don't have like limitations. In case you have something that you've built, it can be maybe an app you've built in Compose and so on and so on, or maybe some idea that you've seen that can work in Mars. Follow the theme, and then we'll have a date on Friday where you can showcase what you've built, and then we'll give you a session to present and also maybe talk more about it. So I'm looking forward to seeing your submissions or seeing your presentation come on Friday. Yes, so in case you have, yes, you can reach out to us. We have a couple of maybe organizers. We have Frank and we have Candy and myself. So in case you have any idea or maybe anything you feel that we should try out on the meetups and so on, please feel free to reach out to us. On most of our platforms, that is maybe what we call ourselves, from Twitter, maybe Telegram, and also, yeah, Twitter and Telegram. We are active on Twitter and Telegram. So please feel free to give us your ideas, or maybe submit your session in case you even want to maybe someone to look over your submission before you submit it. Feel free to reach out to us. We are always open to ideas and feedback. So I think I'll let our first speaker today to go on with the session. Mugambi, are you here?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Yes.
So I think you can. I didn't introduce yourself so that I cannot take away the meat from your presentation.
Okay. Okay. So can I share my screen?
Yes. Let me give you the. Let me stop recording. Then you'll be able to present.
Yes.
Just a minute.
Okay.
Yes, now you can.
Okay. So my name is Kelvin Mugambi. I'm a software developer. Currently, I'm a business analyst at GetTunes. I'm a solution oriented, as you can probably see or learn later. I like programming, not as a job, but as an hobby. I like solving my problems. You can see my strengths, which I graded myself. So I feel I'm 90% at problem solving. I'm probably better at programming, but you guys please don't crucify me because programming wise, I'm not so clean. I probably have misused some variables and some concepts, which I'll clean later after I'm sure the code is running, everything is working. Graphical design, I can say I'm not badly off. I've designed several websites. In every icon and images that I've used in my application, I designed them myself. So today I will be presenting an application called Hways. It's a new concept, and the problem that the application is trying to solve is basically three things. Three things in that cause that affect us on the roads. We have the loss of life and injuries. So the application is meant to be used on during navigation on our Kenyan roads. I can say that I'm not like the really first person to develop such an idea. I've borrowed so much idea from apps like Hways, apps like TomTom. I'm using actually the same technology they are using. However, the key point about the application is that it is solving our problems as Africans, as Kenyans. You know, some problems that we face as Kenyans are different from problems that are faced by a country like Israel and the United States. So I came up with an idea to use in Kenya in our third world country roads. So the problem that we are trying to solve with the application is the loss of life and injuries. It's documented that in Kenya alone, every day over like 10 people die on our roads every day. Those including children, young Kenyans, the family breadwinners, and such people. Then we have loss of money. That is when you eat things like the potholes, speed bumps, you have to incur some cost doing the repairs and everything. Then there's the lawsuits. Remember, our speed governors are limited to roughly 80 kilometers per hour. But places like schools, we have a limit of 30 kilometers per hour. All towns, we have a limit of 50 kilometers per hour. However, we have signs which can guide you, but these signs are not easily available. They are easily looted, and you can find out that most of our roads do not have such signage. So what is the solution that we are offering? There's a virtual road sign. We are creating like virtual signs. Instead of having the signs in the road, we can have them virtually on your device, which is cheaper and which means that it's always there. We have the violation reminders. When you approach places like schools, we have the reminders for schools and town. That means that we can have a variable, a flexible way of alerting people. You're not limited to speed governors that are like 80 kilometers per hour. You can be limited to schools. You can be alerted when you're going past towns, when you're in highways, when you're in dual carriage, meaning that you can drive at 110 and not get the violation alerts. Then the third solution is using crowdsourcing. As you all know that I find some drivers when we're driving along our Kenyan roads, most of the time you see the guys trying to tell each other how the police, okay, I'm not actually using the having the police feature, but I have the accident feature, which I can use as an example. So you find the other drivers notifying the drivers ending to the opposite direction of probably an accident that is causing a jam, things like that. So we'll be using crowdsourcing technology for drivers to share the information with other drivers through the application. So some small global statistics, over 33% speed related accidents. It's I can say like 33% of accident cost in our roads are caused by accidents, by overspeeding, sorry. Then speed bumps, which people complain a lot about, especially driving at night, can decrease fatality rate by up to 73%. I did some little research with the black spot in in the road ending to Western Kenya. They were saying, they were complaining about the speed bumps. Their roads not having speed bumps. Like they were saying 30 people would die at a certain spot every month. But when the speed bumps were installed, the statistics were the opposite. Now people are not dying, but cars were crashing. So, and the complaint was that they did not see the speed bumps. Probably there was poor signage. The speed bumps are in corners and things like that. Another thing, 40% of road accidents occur during the night. As you all know, the visibility is low. You cannot see the speed bumps. You cannot see the signage and such things. So our product overview. So what is Hways? Hways is a GPS navigation software that will work in Android smartphone. Currently, I've developed the application in Android Studio using Java, which limits me to just using Android for now. There are plans in future to use Flutter. Thanks to Candy, she introduced me to Flutter. So I'll just have a look at it, and probably she'll help me out in developing the application in Flutter. If the products it's really viable for solving the problems. So the app creates virtual speed limits, create virtual signage, and road hazards like floods, like accidents, potholes, and everything. So when the alerts are virtually ended, then the drivers can be alerted in real time when they are approaching these things. That can be an advantage to people who do not really understand the roads they were driving to, when driving at night, when driving when it's raining, and so on. So the feature list, we have the virtual road signs, which includes the speed bumps, black spot, dangerous roads. Sometimes a road could not be a black spot or does not have potholes, but it's bumpy and such things. Then there's the speed limit. Will be alerting people as they pass through schools, towns, highways, and dual colleges with different speeds. There's a road accident. The road hazards. Drivers will do a crowdsourcing of accidents they meet along the way, the constructions, things like the debris on the road, and any other road hazards, including the stalled vehicle on the road. There's a time I did a small research and found out that stalled vehicles at night can be really a big risk to the people. In Western Kenya, there was a time it caused a really big accident when a sugarcane truck was stopped on the side of a vehicle. So drivers can be alerted when there's a car that has stopped on the side of the road at night or any time of the day, and they can slow down and react accordingly. There's the accident reporting. This actually, I cannot say that I have implemented it, but it's part of what we'll do. So the accident reporting is that we can, as drivers, we can report a new accident and alert the authorities, and they can take immediate action. With that, we have an advantage where people they fear reporting because they know that they'll be tracked, go write a statement, to explain what happened. But with the application, you just click a button and the authorities are alerted of the accident. So this is the interface of the application. Still working on how it will look like. So this is the home page. Sorry guys, I cannot like use the Android Studio to show you the live demo because I'm limited to my performance. I usually do the testing on my Android phone, which probably I can zoom in my phone and I can do a simple demo. But for now, I'll do some sort of screenshots. So this is the home page. We have you can set your mode if you're driving at night and you want to limit the light and everything. When you're passing through a speed limit, you'll be alerted through an audio sound when you are over the speed limit, probably 50 kilometers per hour. You'll get a beeping sound, not so disturbing. After every like 5 seconds telling you you're above the speed limit. You'll be seeing your speed and everything. The speed that you're driving your vehicle at. The next thing is that there's the under alerts. Sorry, there's something I missed out. Okay, see here, you can create an account with us. You're not limited to having an account with us. You can skip the login, but the advantage of having the account with us is that you'll be able to earn the points of interest. You'll be able to crowdsource for other drivers. So you can just create an account, and in doing that, you'll be able to add accidents, black spots, speed bumps, and everything. But of course, we'll have to regulate it because we can't just let anyone to do the reporting. We can flag some people report false points. We'll have to do some clarification. Probably the first person reports, it's not a sure bet. A second person reports. Now we are sure we are sure the point of interest just exists. So how do you earn the points? It's simple, a click of a button. There's a bottom sheet dialog. You just click on the floating button on the right, and the bottom dialog appears. It's categorized if you want to under sign in, just spin limit or a cloud sourced as and. So then a dialog box will appear. Then you can select the thing that the points that you want to add. Then when the point is added, for you will not be reported because you just abandoned it. You're sure it exists, you know what it is. The other drivers that will be using the application and driving on the same road, they'll get an audio alert, something like spin bumps ahead, something like school zone ahead, drive at 30 kilometers per hour, things like approaching a black spot, drive with caution, things like that. That is for any item that exists here, from spin bumps to hazard. Let's say there's a sort of some cleaning on the road and everything. So you'll just be given an audio alert and also a visual alert. A bottom dialog will pop up for the time that you'll be driving to a spin bumps. Once you close the spin bumps, for the spin bumps, it's a little bit different than the others because this is kind of very crucial. You want to be sure the spin bumps exist 50 meters from the point that you are driving. If it's 100 meters, you want to be sure it's 100 meters. And after the spin bumps, now you can remove the visual pop-up. So this is an example of spin violation. You'll get an audio notification, a beeping sound when you're above the spin limit. I was doing the testing, as you can see here. We are driving at 110 kilometers per hour. The limit is 30, so you'll be getting a beeping sound until you just exit the spinning limit. So that is just a snapshot of what the application does. if I could, it's a bit more interesting if it was being done live. I did some research and found out that to see the meaningfulness of an application, you need to interact with the drivers. I've got a chance to interact with few drivers. They were really, really interested, very happy about the product. We have done a demo with a certain friend of mine, and he was really, really happy. He told me that driving at night for him is an Uber driver. Driving at night is a big challenge. You don't know where the speed bumps are. Sometimes you hit them, and once you hit one, your mind is just like, now there are speed bumps everywhere. You're driving and you see speed bumps that do not exist because you saw this, you hit one without seeing. So driving at night can be really stressful for people, but the application can solve that. Considering that so many undocumented accidents really happens without like caused by the speed bumps. So many of them. Like yesterday on Tuesday, there was an accident, a minor accident that was not really minor. It was not reported, but it was caused by an speed bumps. So with the application, the drivers can be alerted. So basically, this is a snapshot of what the application does. Then, other than that, I found an interesting problem that I could share, and probably you can see my programming approach and advice. I saw the one of the what is it called? One of the like core values of our project is quality and quality. For now, I don't think I've achieved quality. The code is not very clean, but I know I'll clean it up because it's working. And I know cleaning up is a little bit simple. It's just removing the unnecessary if statements, removing unnecessary variables, and probably reducing the code length. Because I think I have over 20,000 lines of code, including the XML files, the XML's code, and I know I can reduce it by more than 500 lines of code. So these are certain problems that I found to be interesting. One of them actually, I think I found so many funny problems that I was able to use. An example was using calculus, programming a concept using calculus, the differentiation calculus. I needed to see change of a certain change, put it in an array list, and produce like 4 other change of variables, like for example, change of y, all over change of x. That is calculus, differentiation calculus. Then I would store that in the array list, and once we have like 3 to 4, we can compare the change so that we can probably do a certain thing. So interesting problem is that you can see this is a circle, 360 degrees, but once we get to 360, we start again at 10. The reason I did this is that I wanted to keep track of the bearing, the bearing of the driver direction. For example, if they are going towards this direction, I need them to see these are probably 45 degrees, bearing of 45 degrees. However, my problem was this. I need them to see a deviation. For example, if you're at 50, I would allow a deviation of, let's say, 25 degrees to the clockwise sign, and 25 degrees to the anti-clockwise sign. That gave me a challenge because once you are at, let's say, 350 and you deviate clockwise, mathematically 350 plus 25, you get to 375, right? But in the real sense, when you are talking about bearing, you can never have a 375 degrees. Once you deviate 25 to the right, you get to 375. That's true mathematically, but on the bearing side, we are probably 15. So I needed to figure out a way of how I will track the limit to 369 or 359. And once we are beyond the 359, we can go to 0 and start again. And at the same time, I need to track like to see if the 359 is greater. Or okay, I'll show you that on the concept. So the concept was that as I've explained, if you go 25 degrees to the clockwise and you're at 0, you'll have two different figures. You'll have negative 25 and you'll have positive 25, of which there's no negative 25 on a bearing. So that's the problem I face. The solution is that we can track if a number is greater than 360 degrees or less than 0 degrees. Then after, compute the number accordingly. I have a little code that I can show you of how I did it. This is a section of the code that I have. I just took out a chunk, just something small. It's probably over 5,000 lines of code, but I just took out the interesting part that I needed to show for the presentation. You can see the check bearing deviation is not in use because it's used somewhere else, but I am not using it here.
Mugambi,
yes.
We are on the presentations in case you are presenting something.
Okay, I need to take you to the
Yes.
Android studio.
Yes, it happens.
Sorry, guys. So are you there, guys? I think you can see the Android studio now.
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. So as I was saying, so these are simple. It's a snapshot. I took a small section of my code that I was interested in showing for the presentation. You can see the check bearing deviation is not being used because it's used somewhere else, but I removed that section of the code. So I know, guys, I'm doing some things that are not right. The naming scheme, the naming, like then how I name my variables and everything, I know can be a little bit weird. You can see the new hyperlimit. Probably the name is not like professional programmers. As I said, I'm a business analyst, but I like programming as an hobby and solving my problems. So I think I could have some few downside on the programming side, but I'll improve on that, and I'll be doing the code cleaning. I'll work on that. So you can see now there's an int bearing. Let's assume this is 0 degrees, or let's say 5 degrees. If I take you back to my PowerPoint, the 5 degrees is somewhere like here, but we need to track the deviation to the clockwise and the anti-clockwise side. The anti-clockwise side will be negative 20. The clockwise side will be 30, which is on the clockwise side is okay. We can have a bearing of 30. So my solution was I did this. I think if it's 5, it's okay. We can do the addition and negative for the deviation. So I took a number, which is a bearing of 5. I want a deviation of plus minus 25. So I can add 25 to rotate to the clockwise. But what if it's greater than 350? Meaning probably we have a bearing of 350. Then we have 160. Okay, sorry. Then we have 125. We are probably at 375, 380. So I was tracking if it's greater than 360. Actually, the purpose of me showing this code is that I want you guys to correct me if my programming approach is good, I probably may be coding in logics and not using the principles of programming. So I will check if the upper limit is above 360. For example, we have the, let's say in this example, I can use 355. If you want 255, we get a new upper limit of 355 plus 25, we get 380, which we cannot have a bearing of 380. It's either, if it's above 360, it starts at 0. So in our case, it's greater than 360. So we do a negative so that we can now get the bearing on the lower side. So we say 380 minus 360, and now we can produce a bearing of 20. So it's over here 20, but mathematically it's 380. So if we do a minus of 360, we can now have our normal bearing of 20. Okay. I think again, I went to the PowerPoint without taking you there, but no problem. So now I can get my new upper limit. If it's not greater than 360, probably it's 358. It's okay, we can have a bearing of that, and we can set the upper limit as that bearing. On the lower side, when you're going the anti-clockwise side, we can have a bearing of 5. And if we minus by 25, we get a bearing of negative 20. So in that case, I will check if the lower limit is below 0. So we're in the negative sign, negative 20. And in that case, I will have to hand 350 so that I can get a positive value, which is a true bearing. So then I could have the new lower limit, and I can use that in an if statement to check if the bearing is within an acceptable range. So basically, you guys can correct me programming wise. You can tell me if the idea is viable. I would appreciate your feedbacks. I hope I was a bit clear. Sometimes I can explain myself literal more. So I hope you guys can really understand what I was doing and give me some thinking, what you think about the idea and what you think about the coding concept. Basically the principle that you've seen me using for the programming. Thank you. Aaron.
Yes, I can hear you.
So I hope someone can comment about the concept and about the programming principle.
Okay, I think we will allow them to comment, but I have a quick question.
Okay. Yes.
So in mathematics, not maybe in programming.
Yes.
If you get a bearing for negative 25 will be very different from once you do like this upper limit things. Do you have like checks for that or something? I cannot remember well correctly. It is a long time since I did like mathematics and so on, but
okay,
maybe a bearing for, let's say, -5 is not the same as once you do like -5 plus the number that you are adding, maybe to get like I'll take the positive one, which was 380. So a bearing of 380 is not the same as a bearing of 20, which was the final value that you'll get from the code. So
actually, it is. So we are at 350. We need to add 30, a deviation of plus 30. Sindio?
Yes.
350 plus 30 is 380. If you are rotating towards the clockwise sign, 30 will be somewhere here at 380 because we have 350, 360, 370, 380. So you need to reciprocate that into a true bearing. Remember on the bearing sign, when you're in maps, in Google Maps, and you're fetching the bearings for your direction, if it's pointing this, it's pointing at 350 degrees on your bearing. If you probably rotate your vehicle or your driving direction, you're pointing at something like 20 degrees Celsius. When it hits to 360, it always starts again at 0 and back to once the 360 signs. When you go back and you are like 0, it doesn't continue to negative. It goes back to 359. So that was the problem. So in our case, if you take 350 and you under a deviation of 30, you'll go to 380 mathematically. But we need to convert that into a true bearing. So in that case, if I say 350 plus that, we get 380, and I see it's greater than 360, I can minus 380 minus 360, which is to find the difference in deviation, and I can get the 20, which is the direction that we're heading to, that the Google Maps can give us as our true bearing. Was I clear?
Okay, yes. I think mathematics at times.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think I get it, the whole concept.
Yes,
so,
yes.
But first and foremost, I think,
okay.
Thank you very much for the
Okay,
courage to even present or maybe share this presentation.
Okay.
I think when I was in my maybe first application, I could not even share the code with people.
Okay.
So I think for the courage, that's a very big plus. And think for, as you are saying about the quality, those are things you learn with time. And it's not something that you can beat yourself maybe right now. But I think for me, it's a very interesting problem. I like the way you've outlined the concept, the problem, and the solutions that you have so far. And at least you have a presentation to even show us. And it is interesting. We are normally used to maybe solving problem. We are normally used to maybe doing to do apps, maybe apps that fetch maybe something from the network. But it's even amazing just to see like an application that you have solving a real problem. And for me, I think you're going on the right direction, and don't beat yourself about the coding things. Those are some things you learn along the way. Yeah. Like maybe naming a method starting with maybe that capital letter. Those are things you learn along the way. But for me, great work, and a bigger plus for the courage to even present on such a platform, because not many people can have that courage. So continue doing the good work. And I think now we can open up the floor to questions, maybe, or feedback. Anyone, you can maybe unmute yourself and speak, or maybe just stay on the chat. So as people wait, Eric had a question. I think maybe you answered along the presentation, but he was asking, how does the app know about the speed limit, speed bumps, and whatnot in the road? So maybe you can maybe try to answer that as I look at further question on the chat.
Okay. Thank you for the question. I'll use the screenshots. Okay, I can. Okay. I think you can see, I hope you can see my screen.
Yes.
Okay, so what happens is that whenever let's say you understand bounds to a point, let's say XY, latitude X and longitude Y, that point is recorded in your application, and once you confirm that, you send it to our Firebase database. The reason why I decided to use a Firebase is for the real-time reporting. Someone can report an accident 300 or 500 meters ahead, and you can get the update right there and then. So that's why I decided to use the live cloud database, so that it can be like live every time. You can get the update and data every second, every minute. So when you do that, you want the coordinates to the Firebase application database, let's say XY. Then when a driver is approaching XY, 200 meters based on their speed, 200 meters, 400 meters, if they are driving very fast. We check the distance between the XY. We take your coordinates, let's say AB, and then we can check the distance between your coordinates and the point of interest, probably as speed bumps. If we're within the range of like 100 meters, we need to trigger like there's a point of interest that you're approaching to. Now then we can fetch the fetching of the points is done like every 6 minutes. We don't need to keep fetching the database from cloud, considering the network usage, the battery, your battery capabilities. We don't want to drain your battery in the next 2 hours. So we do a single fetch, a bulky fetch of probably a radius of 11 kilometers. So you'll be covered, you'll get the notification for 11 kilometers. We put that in your cache so that you can be like accessing the cache instead of accessing the Firebase database each time. And with that, we can achieve probably in like 100 kilometers, you can use less than like 100 kilometers, you can use less than 3 MBs of data, let's say 5 MBs of data. So we're trying to do that to minimize your network connectivity usage and everything. So you are at longitude and latitude AB. There's a point of interest at longitude X and Y. And now we have approached the point at probably it's ahead of us with 100 meters. So we can fetch the cache and we are constantly checking the cache if we are within a certain point of interest. Then now we can do the pop-up for you and alert you. For example, here, you can see there's a speed bumps here. And we are at this point. Sorry, I've not put my own marker. You can see there's a speed bumps here and our point is here. So we check the distance between I think I can zoom in. We check the distance between the point of interest, the spin bumps, and our position. If it's probably 100 meters, now we know the point of interest is within our range, and we can report that with our pop-up and with an audio notification. I hope I've answered your question.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
So thank you for the answer. I think we still have more questions. Someone is asking, is the project on GitHub? I know that is a controversial question.
Okay, thank you for that. I've not attended it to GitHub, but I think I'll need to do that very soon. Once I do that, I can communicate to you guys. You can help me out with doing the testing.
Okay, I think it will be maybe, yeah, you can even do maybe a live demo or something of the sort. It will be awesome to see how.
Sure. Yes.
Okay, maybe later
I do a live demo. Okay.
Not now, in the interest of time.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, maybe later on. So Eric has another question. Does the app work on the background or it's set to operate on foreground alone?
Okay, thank you for the question. I have like a plugin if to allow the application to work on the background, but I usually find the application that work on the background to be a little bit of energy consuming and probably unnecessarily alerts in case of my application. That's why I limited the application to avoid that. However, I've enabled the in picture mode so that when you want to work on something, you can just click the home button and the application will create a small like image that will appear on your screen and you can drag it at the point that you want. The reason being, when you're driving your car, I met a guy who works for who has an NGO, their own safety, whatever. They are always advising people not to use their phones when you're driving. Remember, the application is used just when you're driving. You're not sitting in an hotel and opening the application unless you want to see probably the points along your path and things like that. So when you're driving, we don't really recommend that you put your application to be like you're chatting and you want your application to alert you. Okay, you can do that, but the is in picture mode will be present on your screen. But if you cancel the application, you'll not be able to get the alerts. So the point is that you take your application, open it. You can open Google Maps for the direction and whatever. That's okay, because the application will be in picture mode somewhere in the screen. But you put your phone probably on the holders, then you can drive. If you want to chat and you want the application to be closed, you're violating the road. Sorry to say, for the drivers who probably want to chat while driving, sorry to say, you'll have to open your application, put it there, concentrate on the load, get the alerts, and you'll be safe. So no, not enabling, but I can do that, but I'm really in a bargain to do that.
I hope, Eric, you've been answered. Yes, so I think I'll also read some other comments. And okay, maybe I can also comment maybe on maybe since you're using Firebase, you can also do something like maybe notifications, maybe in case you had recorded the location early on, you can push something like location or something of the same. And also something interesting to check out, we have something like Android for cars. We have a library or maybe a form factor, the same way you can build for wearables. Maybe it's something you might be wanting to check along the same lines.
Yeah, actually, I've seen that technology. It's called Android Auto.
Yes. I didn't know the correct name, but I know there is something of the same. So I think that can address the drivers using maybe phones while driving. And so
sure. Yes.
So maybe just maybe in case you have a question, feel free to unmute yourself or maybe send on the chat. So maybe I'll just read a few comments, and then in case we don't have any other question, we can call it a wrap.
Sure.
Yeah, we have Nyakundi saying he's impressed and challenged at the same time by your project.
Okay, thank you.
So So yes, I think yeah, we have Kanake saying nice idea, and then yes, I think So one last question: why did you choose 100 meters for the point of interest? And from Brains,
actually, I've seen that question.
Yeah.
We are not limiting it to 100 meters. It's based on your speed. If you're driving at probably 200 kilometers per hour, you'll get the alert as far as 400 meters. But if you're driving at, let's say at 30 kilometers per hour, you don't need to get the alert 400 meters away or 100 meters. Your mind will have switched off to there's no bounce, or you'll have to forgotten. So you'll get the alert 50 meters close to the speed bumps. So it's
Hello, I think, are you still speaking?
hello, Aaron.
I think we lost you for a bit. I don't know if it's only.
Am I audible now?
Yes.
Okay, so I was saying that this Brin asked about why did you choose 100 meters for the point of interest? Okay, I love the project. Thank you. So my solution or my answer is that we are not limited to 100 meters. If you're driving at 200 kilometers per hour, you'll get an alert for 100 meters before you can hit the bump. But if you're driving at 30 kilometers per hour, you'll get the
I think, Mugambi, we are losing you at the very last minutes, but I think the answer is
Yeah.
clear.
Okay, actually, you lost me. So actually, to just do a quick solution, a quick answer. I hope you can hear me now.
Yes, but we
Uh,
the very last minute is when we are losing you.
Okay, an answer is that it's not a constant at 100. It is variable based on your speed.
Okay.
Yes.
Aaron, I have a comment for Mugambi.
Okay, go ahead.
So this is Korir. So I actually like your idea, Mugambi.
Thank you.
Around 2019, we had almost the same idea of
Okay.
showing all the black spots on Kenya Road using NTSA data. So we mapped all the accident spot using weather data also, and using geofences to
Okay.
alert drivers when they approach these spots.
Okay.
So, and there's another app also known as Kombwizi. I think it's trying to report real-time accidents. So
Easy. Okay.
you can check on it and borrow some ideas from the same. Otherwise, your idea is really good and also borrowing almost the same concepts.
Okay.
So just
Thank you.
check and explore using geofences and things like that. And if you could check at Kombwizi, because Kombwizi was our competitor then, and they really did well.
Yes.
So you can borrow some ideas from there.
Coril, I tried using geofencing.
Yeah.
But it could not work. Geofencing has an issue with the delays. You can hit the spin bands, then get an alert 2 seconds later. So I had to create my own concept because I figured out that spin bands are critical. We don't need to, we do not have an allowance for the delays. So I had to create my own concept that I used for better accuracy. So actually I've tried the geofencing idea. It works, but it has some few issues. But thank you for that. Thank you for telling me about the other app. I'll do a little research on that.
So just the last thing, you can just use an hybrid of the same to see an optimization and accuracy. So that's it.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
So I think one last question, maybe
Yes.
so that we can also go to the next session. So Alan, in a case where you are stuck in traffic for more than 1 hour without any movement, will the app fetch that every 6 minutes?
Okay, thank you for that. Actually, I was thinking of that. We were thinking of that doing the auto fetching data, but we are limited to, we don't have like cloud computing as per se. We can get the data, but we need to analyze the data. Most of the application, they have their servers so that they can analyze the data. I can get like 100 reports of probably slow moving vehicles, but how do I compute that? The computation is done on your Android devices. You fetch what we are doing online is just fetching the data. We are not doing any cloud computing on the database. So it's a good concept. Yes, I can add the data to the Firebase, but I need to read the data. A solution is that you can compute the data on your devices, but it's a really good point that you have highlighted. I love look at it more and probably the solutions that we'll do. Yes, we can do that for probably the traffic, alerting about the traffic automatically. We can do that. Thank you so much, Alan. That's a good idea you have handed.
Okay, I guess that was it from the question side. So again, thank you very much for the session and for the courage to present. I think everyone is in agreement that the idea is a great one and continue with it. So maybe we have the Telegram channel where you can maybe post a link, people to play around with it, maybe to give maybe feedback on the app, apart from the idea. So feel free to share the link for the Play Store application.
Okay. Actually, Aaron, it's not in Play Store, it's still under development, but I believe it's 90% developed. So I can probably share a private link to the application.
yeah, in case you need maybe early testers, we are here to do the testing and so on and so on.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. I think let us not maybe dwell time on that because we have another session and I do not want to take all the time for the other session. So thank you so much for the amazing presentation and walkthrough for your problem solution and the maybe challenges you faced. So next, we have our next session, which is on dynamic feature modules. I don't want to maybe preempt on what the speaker is going to say. So Perez, if you can hear me, this is your time now.
Thank you, Harun. Also, Mugambi, that was an amazing session.
Thank you very much.
So I'm Perez. I'm an Android developer at Kiosk Digital Services. And for the past almost 1.5 years, I've been working for Kiosk. I use Kotlin for all our mobile applications. I'm a huge proponent for MVVM, and we use coroutines. And for our local storage, we use Realm as opposed to Room. So this is my first tech talk, and I chose to speak about dynamic feature modules because it has turned out to be very useful in our organization and has made things much better in terms of architecture, delivery. Of course, I'll expand on this during the talk. I'm going to share my screen and share with you my presentation. I hope you're all able to view the screen now.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, I'll start with a brief overview of what the talk is going to involve. So we are going to introduce what modules are in the context of programming in general, and then I'm going to introduce it in the context of Android app development. Also, we will discuss why modularization is useful in an Android developer's life, and also expand more on dynamic modules, discuss the disadvantages and disadvantages. We will go over how to decide what type of module to include in your app. And finally, we will go over just briefly the kind of architecture we use at Kiosk with these dynamic feature modules. So I would say in general, a module is a collection of source files, settings, and then resources, things like strings and icons that are related. So we store them together in a module. So the essence of this is essentially to create independent units of functionality where we can say remove one module and the app might still continue working, or have a central module which has some basic resources that maybe can be used within other modules of the app. In an Android setting, we have this various types of module. When you go to project, then try to create something new. If you select create a new module, you are likely to experience this screen where we have phone, tablet modules, we have Android library, dynamic feature modules, also instant dynamic feature modules, and then we can see here other types for non-mobile devices, like say we have wearables, TV, Android things, and automotive. I believe that one's used for navigation in vehicles and other automotives. So for this talk, we'll just go over the Android library, dynamic feature module. There's a Java and Kotlin library not showing this slide, but also we will just mention what instant dynamic module features are. So in a modularization architecture in Android, what we aim to do is basically change, separate the main code implementation from the features. So essentially, we are proposing that each feature in your app is added onto the app as a separate module, so that if you remove that feature, the app might still continue to work, or you will be able to provide this feature on demand only when somebody needs it. So without it, the other functions should be able to work properly. So in this case, we tend to have a main app module, which is the Android app module. It's a container for the source code. It has resource files it contains strings, styles, drawables, and navigation resource files. And it also has some settings that affect the app overall, like where we can specify in the app modules Gradle file what the app name will be, or in the manifest, how we'll display the app when it's installed on the phone, the name that will be shown, the icon. We define this kind of things in the app module, which is the base module. And this one is compulsory because this is what we will always have to install on our app to be able. Also, it will also contain some of the base logic for adding the other modules to the application. And then we have the Android library modules, which the difference between an Android library module and a Java Kotlin module is essentially that the Android module has the Android project and Android framework dependency, so that when you compile it, we will end up with an archive that is in the format of an AAR, while a Java or a Kotlin module, if you compile it, you get a jar file. So the content is just the same. You put there your reusable codes, your classes that you want to use in other parts of your application, in other modules. Then we have things like helper classes. If you have some utilities, for example, if you write custom functions on how to show progress on a button, conversion functions, if you're handling date conversions, maybe you're getting UTC time from the server and you want to show the user local time, you can put your conversion functions in a library so that you can use them throughout the app. Another great thing about libraries is once you have added all your common classes and functions there, you can import it in another project within your organization so that you already have all this stuff and you don't have to rewrite them again. Then the last type of module we'll discuss is the feature modules. So feature modules, essentially, we are going to use these ones to store code that relates to a specific feature. So structurally, it's similar with the app module, but the difference is that it is going to contain some things that are only related to that particular module, so that if we had to disable or remove it, our app won't break. So the focus of our talk, of course, is the feature modules. So you might be wondering how we can go about creating this, deciding on what to do. How do we decide on whether we want an instant module or whether we want an on-demand dynamic feature module or a library? So I came up with a few questions that we might ask ourselves to help us decide on this. So if your feature requires on-demand delivery, that is, I don't need it when I'm installing the app, but while progressing further in using the app, I'll need it sometime later, then now that you can choose to have it as a dynamic feature module. I will make a distinction in the next slide of what on-demand means. But then we also have instant delivery. Instant delivery comes in handy when you are when you want the user to try something without actually installing it in the app. So in the past we had instant apps, but right now we have instant modules. So when you include an instant module in your app on Play Store, the user can be prompted to try out the app without actually installing it on their device, and then maybe install other things. So if your feature depends on device configuration, for example, if you have a feature that requires a proximity sensor or maybe a location, and a device doesn't have GPS installed, or a device doesn't have a camera, but your feature requires a camera, if you need to be able to check for that before you allow the user to download and install the module. And that's when we go with conditional dynamic module. So there really isn't any difference between a regular dynamic feature module and a conditional dynamic module, except for during the installation bit when you need to check for preconditions or criteria before installing that particular module. So if you realize that actually your app doesn't, if your feature doesn't fall in any of these three, then you have two options. You can either add it to the base module, or just create a library and then you will include or add this library as a dependency anywhere you need it. So in dynamic feature modules, we have to make a distinction between install time and on-demand feature modules. So install time modules are modules that are essential during the download of the app. So when you download the app from Play Store, the app module should be downloaded because it contains the core code of the app. This will make it an install time module. But if it, in terms of dynamic features, you can have as a unique feature to be able to handle your authentication, which will be registering users, verifying them, and say, or maybe the login logic. So if this is a particular module and you want it to be available immediately the user downloads the app, then you will create it as an install time module. But they also something else. Install time modules doesn't only apply to items that must be there, that has to be there throughout the usage of the app. It could be something that you just need during the initial install of the app, but can be removed later. For example, a lot of apps nowadays have this training module where they guide you on how to use the app. Click here, or sign up here if you want to see this. Those kind of training modules, you typically don't need them after the user has gone through it the first time. When they either click skip or finish the tour, you can now delete that app. So that will be an install time module. Then on-demand modules will come in later. For example, if you use the Instagram app and you're trying to upload a photo, the screen for uploading a photo usually provides you with options of either select a camera or image from phone, or use these filters, I don't know, these extra features and filters like boomerang function, but you actually have to install this in order to use them, because essentially they're not crucial for your usage of the app. They're just additional features. So you can download it and then be able to use it, to add filters to your images and videos before uploading them. But in a more commercial context, or more like business related, if say that you are downloading an e-commerce app, you log in and then you browse the products. After browsing, you want to be able to add an item to cart if you found something you'd like to buy and check out. So initially, we might not provide this cart as an install time module because it's something you just need later during checkout. So what you do is set it as an on-demand module. So there are reasons why you should. There are reasons and situations why you should use dynamic feature modules, whether they're on demand or install time. And one of the best use cases we've had for this at Kiosk is the role-based access control, where we have an app that has multiple users. The features are similar, except for maybe one or two that a user or another is not allowed to access or interact with. So what we do is usually get these user roles from the server, and then based on the user role that the person was authenticated with, we decide which modules to deliver to this person. This is essentially to just prevent them from seeing modules that they are not supposed to see. Or another case would be if you are in a situation where there's an associate and a supervisor, and maybe an associate can only view certain things in your app, but you want the supervisor to have a wider access, then you can implement role-based access during the download and install of your dynamic features. So mostly this will apply to on-demand modules because this you need to have already downloaded your app and install time modules to be able to perform this authentication and validation, and in order to request for the additional features. And I also had already mentioned the optional features like in Instagram, those filter functions and image editing, grid features. You put those on demand. Whoever wants them will use them. In a news app, somebody might just want to read the news but not participate in the discussion. So the discussion module might be on demand so that anyone who wants to start a discussion can download it. Then device hardware configurations. Also, I mentioned if a device doesn't have something required, like a hardware requirement, like a camera, or maybe the API level that that feature needs is not supported by the device, then you put a conditional on-demand module there. Then you could also use dynamic feature modules when you want to add something like language. If part of your authentication process will be selecting the type of the language a user wants to use while interacting with your app, you could add a different feature for, say, a Kiswahili language user and an English language user. Although this is really not the optimal use of it, especially in a large project, because it might lead to you duplicating a lot of modules. But if it's a small project with only a couple of modules, it can be used. So there are obviously always advantages and disadvantages to making any architectural decision. And so for dynamic modules, the reason why we are mostly crazy about it is because it helps us reduce the download size. When we upload our app to Play Store, every feature module is added as a split APK. So if you have auth, it's an APK on itself. If you have a cat, it's an APK on itself. And then you have the app module, of course, which is the base APK. So when you are looking at download size in Play Store, it usually will only show you the size of your base module. So it could just be 1 MB, and then many users are likely to download apps with small file sizes if they're using mobile data. So you install the base module, and then anything else will be downloaded upon request after the user logs in. So basically, small amount of time and bandwidth it takes to install the app on the App Store. Then the fact that you don't install features that you do not need means that the app will only occupy minimal space on your phone. Another thing with this storage is because we are monitoring these downloads and installs of modules, you can always check and see, is the user using this particular module? If they're not, you can delete it. And then if in the event that a user wants to use it again, we will still implement the on-demand download and install for that module. So yeah, they can always access it, but it doesn't have to live on the device every single time. So to us as developers, it's important because it really improves build times when we have modularized our applications, because creating references and links between classes and resources takes much less time. And so the final advantage, it improves our architecture. Once our code is modular, another person coming to work on your app might just look and say, oh, this is an auth module, so I'm expecting everything related to authentication will be in this module. The resource files and the classes, data repositories, they're all there. So it helps with quickly onboarding somebody else who may want to help to work on your code base. But obviously, the disadvantages are there are only so many modules that you can install on the app. If you have more than 50 modules, or let's just say 20, it will take a lot of time during usage. Every time the app has to pause a bit and download a module that you require, especially if you have poor internet connection, then that one becomes a serious performance issue. Also, if you have lots of modules available during install time, like 10 or more, then the app size will be huge, and also the download time will be longer. One of the major problems during development with dynamic feature modules is the fact that if you are trying to implement on-demand delivery, then testing it, you actually have to upload it to Play Store. So during debug, it will always generate all your modules and install them on the app. But if you want to test download of each module on demand, then you have to upload. So if you initially hadn't already have your app reviewed on Play Store, it's going to be a problem. You'll have to wait for some time for your app to go live and then add it. But if you already have the app on Play Store, you can just upload a copy to the internal test track and be able to access it immediately. But either way, it really does take time and effort to upload an app to internal test track every time you want to test it. So that's usually a huge disadvantage. And then in terms of hierarchy structure, unlike libraries, which are totally independent and can be used in other apps or on their own, the dynamic feature modules cannot work without the app module, while the app module can work without the dynamic module. So you can't have one of those independently. So to be able to create a dynamic feature module, it is going to, this general structure is the same as a regular Android app module, where we will have the module level Gradle file, but there are a few things that we need to omit, because always we need to create a link between the dynamic feature module and the app module. We do this by including the base module in as a dependency of the dynamic feature module. And also in the base module, we will add this property Android dynamic features, where we list all the feature modules in that app so that the dynamic module is visible to the base module. In this way, we are able to inherit some configurations and reuse files. There are some, say, classes that are we can keep in the base modules, because a number of other modules will depend on those classes. So So creating this visibility between the base and the features will allow us to do that. So during a basic creation of a dynamic module, we don't need to include sending configs because those ones will be inherited from app. We don't need to include the minified enabled property. Also, we don't need to include the version code and version name. But what we can do is to we can add code shrinking to progad rules. And also we need to, also an important thing to remember is this is a problem to have unique names for your resources. If, for instance, the basic Android resources like strings, styles, you can have specific strings and styles for your feature module. And you also have some that are for the base module. You can't have two files called string in your project. So maybe for the base modules, you can maintain the default name that is strings. And then in the feature module, you'll be required to name something like auth strings and auth style, so that, because during the generation of an Android app bundle, you'll get an error of a duplicate resource name if you don't do that. So another thing that usually happens is data binding. If you're using data binding in a modularized Android application, during the generation of a data binding mapper, usually if you add progad rules to allow for obfuscation in your app, then all the class names will be changed, but the data binding mapper will require the actual name of the class that it's creating a mapper for. So what you do to solve this is actually go into your progad rules. So for every module, you create your progad rules, and then I'll add the rules to keep the data binding, so that those classes that are used by the data binding mapper are not obfuscated. At the end of this presentation, I'll show us how to create a dynamic feature module and to see how this sending configs and version code minify enable comes in. Working with libraries in dynamic features is just the same as working with them in a regular feature. If it's a library from Gradle, then you just add it in the module level Gradle file. If it is a custom library, you will import your library or create a new one in the app. And then if you want the library to be available at just a dynamic module, or even the app module level, you use implementation and then specify the dependency. But if you want the library to be global, you will include it in the base module and use the API to include that library. And then you won't have to include it in subsequent feature modules that are implementing the base module. If you do that, you'll always get an error that you're including duplicate dependencies, because now the app build won't be able to resolve which one to use between the two. I suggested some architecture based on what we currently use at Kiosk to be able to help us on how to make our code more readable and more maintainable. So we are huge proponents of clean architecture, and modularization in general has managed to help us manage the complexity for some of our projects are really large, and it has helped us include abstraction, and also it has helped decouple lots of features and modules from each other. So this has made things much better because code breaks less when we change something in one particular module. And also, I didn't mention this, but dynamic features can be debugged and tested independently of each other. So with this kind of architecture, we will be able to do that. So in clean architecture, we essentially have the data layer, domain layer, and then the presentation layer. So for us, what we do is create packages for everything that we need. Once we create a module in our Java package, we will create a data package which will contain our APIs, and APIs mostly we use them for retrieving data from the server. And then we also include interfaces that we use for local storage. Our data access objects, essentially, we include them in the data package. Then in the domain package, we have dependency injection packages and models. So we use Coin for dependency injection. That's in that package, that's where we define our modules and everything that the modules is dependent on, like the view models, which network client to use, and so on and so forth. And then in the models, that's how we create all the model classes, of course. So all the classes and what DTOs they reside in the model. We also, in some cases, have an events package. We include it in the event for cases where we're using the event bus. The presentation layer is also just another presentation package in our architecture, where we put all our dialogues, the models, adapters, and fragments, and any activities. Although we are more leaning towards a single activity architecture, but you can go further and just create additional packages to separate your fragments from your adapters, from your models, and your dialogues. Also, you can take a step further, because in this first image here, we just have all this, each dynamic feature being as an individual feature on itself. But on this other one, we were able to create directories where we group this so that they're easily accessible. If you go to the core directory, you'll find all our custom libraries like the network and the helpers library, and in the features directory, that's where we collect all the dynamic features and store them in there, so that somebody who just comes and takes one quick glance at the app understands where everything is. So the last part of our talk is the dynamic delivery. So how do we go about installing on-demand dynamic features in our application? So Android, this Playco library has some interfaces and classes that we can use to manage a split install. Yeah, anyway, anytime we generate a an app with dynamic modules, each app comes out as a split APK. So that's how we need a split install manager class. So this contains it contains functions that will allow us to request modules, to monitor download status. You can see we have a split install manager. So essentially, this library will allows us to have constant overview over the state of our download, what downloads were requested, what's the progress, and also it allows us to give feedback to the user. Normally, we show this in terms of progress, the default progress bar, which is just those horizontal bars running through the screen, but you can customize this. Maybe in our next meetup, we can do a code lab on install. So here's a sample code of how to monitor the status of a split install. So first, obviously, you would need a list of all modules you want to install, or it could just be one single module. But you need to create a factory. This happens in the main activity of your application. So once you create a split install manager factory, you will you are able to create a split install request to which you pass the list of all the modules that you want to download, and then the listener will just keep you updated on the session state of your install. So there are a number of, these are constants, these are in session states, the constants that are provided by the library. So your library could be, your module could be in downloading state, that is, it has been requested and now you're just downloading the bytes. So you can create a dialog or just toast or even log that that module is downloading. Once it is installed, you can also pass that information to the user. And usually once it has finished installing, it just automatically opens the first navigation destination of that particular module. And if the session fails, also it will display on the screen that the session failed. So in this listener situation, you have to register your listener, which is what we have done here by setting up the session ID and what to do during whichever status that download is going to be in. And then we register the listener, and then we will start install. So this start install is, it will just compile, it will start the install progress. It checks out what is the list of the modules you passed to the listener, and then requests them from Play Store by itself. And then you need to add on failure listeners and on success listener, and then on complete listener. What will it do when it's complete? But by default, on complete of a dynamic feature download, it will just show you the default location in the next module, as I had mentioned. That's because when you use NavGraph, when you're navigating from, say, the app module to a screen in the feature module, you specify that destination, and that is what will be opened once the feature has been downloaded. So another thing about installs is that you can have deferred installs and also deferred uninstalls. And we have also seen this even when we are not using dynamic features. If an update is really large, you are always required to confirm whether you want to continue downloading it over mobile data or wait until you have Wi-Fi. So this also happens during dynamic feature downloads. If it's large and will take a lot of data, Google Play will require the user to give permission before downloading it. But you can manage this yourself, and you check if there is no data, for example, you can add logic to leave this installation until the time the user has Wi-Fi. Or maybe if the user has lost internet connection, you can defer the install until the time when the user will gain internet connection of whatever type, then you will continue with your install at that time. So also uninstallations can be deferred. Maybe in the case I mentioned where we have training modules, if a user finishes downloading the app and logging in, but they haven't taken a tour of the app, you can just leave that training module on the app deferred until the user does something like dismiss that training module or completes the tour. And then at that time, you can initiate the automatic uninstall of that particular module. That's the end of my presentation. So I'd just like to show you how we can create a dynamic module and how to set it up. It will be very brief. So I'm going to use this existing application and just go through the process of creating a new module, which is a file new. And then we will create a new module. So here you can see all the types of modules we had discussed before, but we are interested in the dynamic feature module. Should be able to do next. And then you define a module name and call it demo. This is what will be displayed when you're trying to install an app. We'll show the user that you're trying to download the demo module. And then you need to specify a package for your demo, which is in line with your current application package name. For instance, this. And then you specify language and also minimum SDK. So this is important because sometimes the feature you're trying to implement might not be supported by some versions of Android. So this is why we'll define the minimum SDK. And then also module title. We recommend that this is the same as the name because it can be a problem if you don't, during navigation in the nav graph, if you don't specify this correctly. So here is where we define whether our app is going to be available during install or on demand. So we can, in this case, let's specify on demand module. And then this option for fusing include module at install time for pre-lollipop devices. That's because pre-lollipop devices are not able to actually handle split APK. So whenever we check this, so we'll just choose all the modules that are appropriate to that device, compact them together, and allow the user to download it as one large module. So once you have defined that, you can sync. So one thing to note that you can actually change whether your app is on demand or install time in the manifest. So Gradle build for that is continuing, but I can show you a case of this. We have here, we'll have the package that we defined during creation. Then we have, okay, if we didn't select an instant dynamic module, then instant will always be false. Then this is the title we named our module, and delivery here, that's the important bit, install time. If, for example, your module was on demand and later you make the technical decision to change it to install time, you can just come and change that here, and that will be sorted for you. So one thing I mentioned about omitting things like minified, enabled, and version code and version name. If we take, for example, okay, Gradle hasn't finished, but I can show you here in the app module how we include this dynamic features property in the Android, under Android. This is how we include, we give our app module visibility of the dynamic feature module. So we just created demo. Gradle will add it for you automatically here. We have it and every other dynamic features that we have. And in the dynamic module itself, like in the case, I might choose this one. You can see that we include app. You see here, we include the base project so that this module can inherit all the relevant configurations and these libraries that are already defined in the base module using the API. As I mentioned, you see in this project, everything that we have defined here as implementation will only be available to this particular module, in this case, the app module, but whatever we've defined as API will be available to the other modules in the application. So essentially, that will conclude my demo on how to create the dynamic feature modules. Everything else will behave like a regular app module, and there are no changes. Okay, actually it finished, so I might say that. So what we do once we get once the build finishes, you can just go ahead and remove this version code and version name. Minified enabled this is not necessary for this, so you can remove that, and then other shrinking instructions you need, you will create a TOGAD file and add them there. I will see the implementation project app was added automatically by Gradle for this. Also, the difference between an app module and a dynamic module is here in the plugin section. We have this plugin that is com.android.dynamic feature that what differentiates between an application module and a dynamic module. You can see here we have, okay, we use Kotlin DSL, so that was included. And also the difference between that and a library module will be, in this case, we have the library com.android.library, differentiate between the application module, Android module, and a dynamic feature module. So that's all from me, and I'd welcome any questions.
Hi, Perez.
Hi.
Thank you so much for the great presentation. I have a couple of questions. One is that on your inventory Gradle, I saw like you're using some other features, dynamic features with inside another dynamic feature. Is that the case? And why are you doing that?
No, that's not the case. We do not use dynamic features instead of dynamic features. But if you saw that we implemented other projects, those are libraries. They help us at the network projects at libraries.
Okay. Then the other question would be for the resources, say strings and values. Are you doing a duplicate kind of thing such that you are renaming, say, authentication string, and on say demo, you will have demo strings as well, or you are using one dynamic resource where you are just inheriting and using the same values?
We are creating new string files for every module. This is because it's simple. When you are in a feature module, you know how we access resources is by doing the importing the package R class, right? So R in a dynamic module will be R for that dynamic module's package signature. And if something is in the app module and you want to use it in your dynamic module, you have to fully qualify the path of that R by saying, in our case, it's kiosk.app is our app module package. So we love to say kiosk.com.kiosk.app.r then to be able to access that resource that is in the app module. But if we have it just specifically in that particular dynamic module, you don't have to fully qualify the path name. You just state it as it. as it, we'll just state it as R the normal way. This also applies to when you're using navigation. So imagine navigation commonly is added into the app module, and you want to access navigation in the dynamic feature module. Of course, a good solution to this is just to use SafeArgs, the SafeArgs plugin, which will resolve this for you. But in case you're not using SafeArgs, you will have to fully qualify the path of every navigation destination you're referencing in dynamic modules from the app module. Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did. And maybe just the last question. Won't it be easier, say you used the network module to say input all your resources, say for strings and values, then you will use that for each and every other dynamic module? Won't that be easier, or what is the challenge in using that approach?
Actually, there are at times you can actually you can add resources in your library file. So you create a library, for example, that contains things like default image placeholders and text placeholders, and you can use them within your code. But you might not be able to use them in the XML files. So if you can't use them in the XML file, then you have to define the string again in your dynamic module.
Okay, thank you. So the last one now. What is the determinant when you are deciding whether to use a dynamic module or just add a class within your app module? What do you look at for you to decide that?
This now becomes almost a product-related problem, because you have to very clearly define what your features are. The use cases, the scope of that feature, or then you, as a developer, you have to see what models you need there, what other resources you need for that feature to work. And once you have everything together, you will be able to use that information to decide whether a library or a module, a dynamic module, will best support your use case.
Okay, thank you.
Good presentation there, Perez. I hope you can hear me.
I can hear you, thanks.
So to touch on maybe the last question that Alan has asked, you've explained it well, and maybe that would touch more on the product flavors. If you could, elaborate more on it so that he can get the point clearly.
Part of feature development is deciding just exactly what the scope of this use case is. And when you are clear on what a feature involves, you will be able to describe what you need for that feature. Product team may tell you that they need users to be able to add items to cart and check out these items to generate an order, right? But there are other things that are involved. First of all, cart itself is an entity. So cart has information: who owns this cart, what are the items on this cart, what are the quantities of the items on this cart, and of course, product name, how many items. Those things can be stored either in one class or different classes, depending on how your project and even the backend is structured. So in this instance, you could have cat as a separate module if it has a lot of functions, classes, and maybe several network calls that need to be made, or local data access. Most cats are usually cached, so you might need to have a local storage there and with data access. So this may quantify to form one module. And maybe during checkout, you can have another step where a user needs to specify payment details, billing and shipping information. So this could, depending on the complexity of how you're handling billing and billing information, maybe it's just a cash payment option. That's a simple enough. It's usually just one screen. But if you need to handle things like adding and verifying credit card, debit card information, if somebody added Visa or PayPal, then it makes the flow a bit complex, and you might want to separate this from the cart section of. So this could warrant you to create an entirely new module for that. And then finally, we have the checkout bit. So if in a simple flow, you could just have cart and checkout in one, all in one module. But if there are other things involved, like I mentioned, the billing and shipping details and other verifications and validations, then it might warrant you to separate this into different modules.
Yeah, such a good detailed explanation there. And so on to the other one, like on your day-to-day work basis at kiosk, maybe you're building on several variants of the app, I believe. And so how do you go about complexity of the code base now with these feature modules and maybe the numerous number of variants?
I did not understand your question.
Your work, the kiosk maybe main code, the base application, and then you're supposed to add variants. These are call them the feature modules to the same, rather from the same base application. And so the more the variants, as you've seen use cases with dynamic feature modules, the more the variants, the greater the complexity of the code base. So how do you go about with, now maintaining such a code base and probably basically maintaining of the code base with the increased number of variants, the feature modules?
Okay, so that's where architecture actually comes in. And as I mentioned, we are a big proponents of separating concerns. So we tend to keep all our data access functions separate from storage and the presentation bit. But if it comes to adding a new module, if it comes to adding a new feature, we really take time to see if this feature can be built on top of an existing feature, or it warrants a creation of a new model on its own. And we take time to evaluate, as already also described before. So one of the things that has helped us is using interfaces a lot. It helps us with abstraction. And so basically we always have interfaces with all the functions we need to get things done, and then in each module we just do the implementation of whatever was in that interface. It helps keep the code clean, and complexity will just come in it will come in terms of, say, implementation, but because we have chosen a good architecture to manage our code base, organization is not one of our major problems.
Oh, sure. Thank you.
So maybe to also clarify on something before there's a couple of questions in the chat, I'll read them out. So we have build variants, and we also have product flavors, as maybe Norman is mentioning, and maybe they are a bit different from modules, or maybe dynamic feature modules. So for build variants, we have something like debug, and we also have something like release. So these are maybe, this is where you define maybe you want a debug build or maybe a release build. And so for the variants, you maybe kind of control how some of the things you want to be done. Maybe a good example is maybe you want for release, there is the minify enabled. And for maybe a debug, you don't want to the minify part enabled. So because of maybe that long builds and so on and so on. So that is what we call maybe the variants. We have the debug and the release, and also you can also define for yourself, like maybe staging ones, QA ones, and so on, depending on maybe your company or maybe your needs. So we have other things like flavors. So flavors mostly, you can have maybe it applies when you have a good example is for the free versus paid thing, where you want the same, you want some features to be on a certain flavor, but not on the other flavors, because with the flavors, you can be able to add like a specific maybe source files for that flavor, which will not be included in maybe in the other flavor. So maybe for, let's say, the paid versus free one, once you have, we can have maybe some features that are in the paid flavor, but not in the free flavor. So that is another whole concept different from the modules, but maybe for flavors, they can apply even in a single module. Also variants the same, and you can also have them applying in multi-module. So that is just to shed light on what Norman was asking about variants, flavors, and so on and so on. It's a whole other topic. Also, maybe we have a question by John. So how long does it take to load an on-demand module?
Well, that will depend on the size of the module and also internet connection speed. Of course, because it's delivered from Play Store, it's usually just delivered the same way as normal updates to the rest of your app is usually done. But in my experience, since dynamic modules tend to be smaller in size, it's usually pretty fast, and you rarely have to see that progress dialog for downloads unless internet is slow.
Okay, John, I think your question was answered. Maybe another question. As a beginner in Android, this is by Steven. What is the difference of creating a project normally and an app module project?
Well, an app module project is basically the main container of any Android project. So when you create a project, whatever we usually have as app, that is what we refer to as the application module, and it's created there by default. So it's essentially one and the same thing. Or unless you actually meant the dynamic modules, which now just additional features that are reliant on the app module of the application.
Steven, is the maybe answer clear? So do we have any other question?
Maybe to add on whatever maybe we have today. So in future, maybe someone or maybe myself could take up on doing demystifying on the flavors and variants, maybe to shed more light and give they basically shed more light into all these dynamic modularization and builds in Android.
Okay, I think we have a follow-up session, maybe for modules in general, maybe later on. And also maybe for the build variants, I think that's a topic we don't have yet. So
Yeah.
feel free to pick it up and maybe do a presentation on the same.
Sure, I'll do.
Yeah, sure. Because this was just modules 101, so basically just an introduction. We definitely have more ground to cover.
Okay.
One more question. Say for a case where you have a staff and a supervisor scenario, and the supervisor is supposed maybe to do some approval of payments and whatnot. Would it be cheaper to say use flags on login instead of using modules? And maybe you could explain why I would opt for a dynamic module rather than just using a flag.
Well, it depends. If they are looking at the same feature, for example, if it's the same feature, but somebody has view access and somebody has edit access, then flags might be appropriate. But role-based access just comes in when you do not want to create two separate apps for a different user, because maybe all that changes is somebody is able to view 3 modules and another person is only able to view 2. So it doesn't really warrant a whole separate app. So you just use that to control who can view which number of features. And when you come to the nitty-gritty of one particular feature, now that one we can talk about flags.
Alan, has your question been answered?
Yes, it's been answered. Thank you.
Okay, I think, do we have any other question? So, yes, Nyakundi.
To add on what you said about play code, there's also another library called, I think, Global Dynamic, which enables the user to test applications maybe if you don't have a Play Store account. I've pasted the link on the chat, I think. Can you hear me? Hey.
Yes, we can hear you clear.
So I was saying there's also another library called globally dynamic. It enables the user to maybe test dynamic modules if you don't have a Play Store account, where you don't test on the internal track. Yeah, so that was the addition that I had, maybe.
Okay, thank you for the addition. I think with no further question, we want to close it at there. Thank you so much, Perez, for the great presentation and the in-depth maybe guide on how to use dynamic feature modules. I think having used them before without such a guide, it was a hassle, but at least you have provided the both advantages, disadvantages, and also some of the consideration you should do, and maybe once you are deciding to use feature modules. Thank you so much for that great presentation. So I don't want to take any further time. I'll just welcome Kendi to do the closing remarks, and then we call it a wrap for our meetup today. Kendi.
Thank you so much, Harun. Thank you guys for the amazing session, Perez and Mugambi. That was really an honor to have you on board. Also, fun fact, I believe this was like, for both of you, this was your first time presenting on Android254, and we're really, really happy to have you. Thank you so much, guys. For the attendees, we are happy that you stuck with the sessions, asked questions, learned, and yeah, making a difference in our session is always a great honor to us. If you wish to give a session, there are some links that was already sent. Harun can resend them back. if you wish to give a session on Android254, or you wish to present your cool idea or app and you need feedback from us, feel free to sign up, and we are always happy to give feedback and maybe direction, and anything that you need from us, we are always happy to give. And if you need testers, they are good testers here. So yeah, without further ado, I think it's time to end the meeting, and thank you so much. See you guys next month for the next session. My name is Kindi.
Yes, and we have a showcase session on Friday. Also, in case you might be interested, please RSVP. Yes, see you.
Yeah, bye guys.